Get your things and leave, Madison. The words sliced through the boardroom like shattered glass. My father didn't even look at me. His eyes were fixed on the gleaming table, as though I was a stain he couldn't bear to see. I didn't move. You're firing me? My voice was steady, but my hands under the table curled into fists. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. He finally looked up, a smirk twisting at the corner of his mouth. Not firing, replacing. He glanced at the man sitting 2 seats away, Ethan, my brother-in-law, my sister's smug, overpaid, lazy husband. He was leaning back in the leather chair like he already owned the place, his Rolex catching the light. You're putting him in my role? I asked, my voice sharper now. Ethan tilted his head, grinning like this was all some private joke. It's nothing personal, Mads. Just, business. Business? My chest tightened. I'd built this division from the ground up. Late nights, skipped vacations, contracts no one else could close. My fingerprints were all over the success of this company. And now, I was being erased in a single meeting. Dad leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. You're too emotionally involved. Ethan can handle things with more perspective. Besides, family loyalty matters, and Ethan is family. I laughed, short, bitter, and humorless. So your daughter isn't? The silence that followed was worse than any answer. My sister, Claire, sat in the corner with her phone in hand, pretending to scroll but smiling just enough for me to catch it. She knew. She'd known all along. I stood, the chair scraping loudly against the polished floor. Fine. You want me gone? I'm gone. But don't forget, Dad. Loyalty works both ways. He waved a hand dismissively. Security will escort you out. They didn't have to. I walked out on my own, my heels clicking hard against the marble floor. But inside, I wasn't just walking away from my father's company, I was walking straight into my next move. Because what my father didn't know was that 2 weeks ago, I'd already signed a deal. A deal with someone who made his so-called empire look like a corner store. And when I showed up next time, I wouldn't be asking for my seat back. I'd be taking the whole damn table. By the time I stepped out of the building, the winter air slapped me in the face, cold and sharp. I didn't stop walking. The lobby security guy, Mark, gave me a hesitant glance, like he wanted to say something but didn't dare with the cameras overhead. I pushed through the revolving doors and hit the sidewalk, my heels punching against the concrete. People were rushing past with their coffee cups and tired Monday faces, completely unaware that my world had just been gutted by the people I trusted most. The phone in my bag buzzed. I pulled it out, saw the name on the screen, and couldn't help but smirk. Timing's perfect, I answered. Madison, tell me you're ready, the voice on the other end said. Deep, smooth, and powerful, Alexander Cole didn't need to raise his voice to command attention. Oh, I'm ready, I said, my breath visible in the air as I turned the corner toward the parking garage. I just got kicked out of the family empire. My replacement, my brother-in-law. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. Good. That means you're going to want this even more. I already want it. But now? I slid into my car, shutting the door against the city noise. Now I'm going to make it personal. Alexander was a name that made CEOs flinch and investors scramble. He didn't just build companies, he devoured them, gutted them for parts, and rebuilt them bigger, faster, and stronger. And 2 weeks ago, over coffee in a quiet midtown restaurant, I'd agreed to partner with him on his next move. He'd asked me one question. How far are you willing to go? I'd answered without hesitation. All the way. Come to my office, Alexander said now. We'll finalize everything. I want you ready for the announcement by Friday. I started the car. Friday? Yes, he said, his voice dripping with amusement. That's the day your father's company signs its new international contract. Or at least, that's what they think. I didn't ask how he knew that. Alexander always knew. The drive to his office was a blur. My mind kept replaying my father's smug expression. Ethan's lazy grin, Claire's little smirk. I could practically hear them celebrating already, clinking glasses over my absence. Not for long. When I walked into Alexander's headquarters, the contrast to my father's office was like night and day. No marble floors or gold accents, just steel, glass, and an energy that felt alive. Every person in the place moved with purpose. His assistant led me into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Alexander was standing there, hands in his pockets, the skyline reflecting in the glass. "You look like someone who just lost everything," he said, turning to face me. "Good. That's the best time to start building something unstoppable." I stepped forward, my chin high. "I'm not just building something, Alexander. I'm going to burn theirs down while I do it." His smile was slow, approving. "Then, let's begin." And just like that, the first stone of my revenge was set. Alexander's office door clicked shut behind me, muffling the hum of the building. He didn't motion for me to sit, just walked toward his desk, picked up a black leather folder, and slid it across the table to me. Inside were documents, pages of figures, acquisition terms, and one name at the top that made my pulse kick: Dawson Industries, my father's company. I looked up sharply. "You're buying them out?" His smile was deliberate. "Number. We're buying them out? Quietly, piece by piece. By the time your father realizes what's happening, the walls will already be closing in." I leaned forward, scanning the papers. This could take months." Alexander shook his head, his gaze locked on mine. "Not with the connections I have, and not with you feeding me what I need." I blinked. "You want me to give you internal intel? I want you to give me the blueprint of the entire company, how it runs, who the weak links are, where the cracks are already forming. You know those cracks better than anyone." My hands tightened around the folder. I did know. I'd spent years patching those cracks, covering for other people's mistakes so my father could keep his spotless reputation. "I'll need to be careful," I said slowly. They won't suspect," Alexander cut in, his voice low but firm. "They think you're out, and that's what makes you dangerous. They'll dismiss you, ignore you. Meanwhile, you'll be setting the stage." I sat back, my mind racing. "Why are you doing this?" His smile vanished, replaced by something darker. "Your father cost me a deal 10 years ago, publicly humiliated me in front of an entire boardroom, told everyone I was reckless, that I'd never last in this business." I stared at him. "So this is personal for you too?" "It was business," he said, picking up a pen and signing one of the pages. "Now it's personal." I didn't respond immediately. Part of me still felt that flicker of hesitation. This was my father, my blood. But then I remembered the boardroom, Ethan in my chair, Claire's little smirk, my father's voice saying Ethan is family. Blood didn't mean loyalty. "What's step one?" I asked. Alexander's eyes lit with satisfaction. "We start by pulling his biggest client out from under him. I've already made contact. They're interested in hearing alternatives, especially from someone who knows Dawson Industries inside and out." I let out a slow breath, the weight of what I was about to do settling on my shoulders. But it wasn't fear, it was something sharper. "I'll get you everything you need," I said. "Good," Alexander replied, leaning back. "Because when this is over, Madison, you won't just have your seat back. You'll own the entire damn table." I closed the folder, the leather warm under my fingers. For the first time since that morning, I felt steady. I wasn't just walking into a fight, I was walking into a war. By Thursday morning, I was already moving. The folder Alexander gave me had become my new playbook. I'd spent the past 2 nights calling old contacts, people who owed me favors, people who knew better than to ask too many questions. Every one of them was another thread I could pull from the fabric of Dawson Industries. Step 1 was the Harper Tech account, my father's biggest client, responsible for nearly a quarter of the company's yearly revenue. I'd landed that account myself 3 years ago after 6 months of negotiations and countless sleepless nights. And now, I was about to take it away. I dialed a number I still knew by heart. "Madison?" A warm, surprised voice answered. "I heard you left Dawson Industries. What happened?" "Let's just say the company's priorities changed," I said, keeping my tone light. "But I wanted to give you a heads up. There are some shifts coming. Changes that might affect your contract." A pause. "Changes?" "Big ones," I said. "Ones that could cost Harper Tech millions if you stay tied to them. I'm working with a new firm now, one that can offer you the same services without the risk, and without the internal instability Dawson's dealing with." I didn't have to spell it out. He knew me well enough to read between the lines. Let's meet, he said finally. Tomorrow. Discreetly. By the time I hung up, I felt that rush, the one that comes from knowing the first domino is about to fall. That afternoon, I drove past my father's office. I wasn't going in, I just wanted to see it. From across the street, the Dawson Industries logo gleamed in the winter sun. Inside, I imagined Ethan in my old chair, trying to understand spreadsheets he'd never touched before. I almost laughed, but the humor faded quickly when my phone buzzed again. Claire, heard you've been busy. Dad says you're making desperate little moves. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Desperate. Number this was calculated. I typed back one line. Me. Tell Dad desperation looks a lot like opportunity when you're on the right side of it. 10 minutes later, my father called. Madison, he said without greeting, his voice clipped. I don't know what you think you're doing, but if you're trying to embarrass me, I cut him off. No, Dad, I'm not trying to embarrass you. I let my voice go cold. I'm trying to make sure the next time you see me, you understand what happens when you underestimate someone. A sharp inhale on the other end. This is still your family. Family, I said, my voice shaking. Not from fear, but from the heat of finally saying what I'd swallowed for years. You made it clear in that boardroom, Dad. Ethan is family. I'm just expendable. He started to say something, but I hung up. When I walked into Alexander's office the next morning, he was already smiling. Harper Tech? He asked. I slid a signed letter of intent across his desk. Ours. Alexander leaned back, satisfaction in his eyes. You've just cut their lifeline, Madison. The clock is ticking for Dawson Industries now. And for the first time in days, I felt the balance start to shift. The day of the Dawson Industries Victory Gala arrived, a black tie event my father had arranged to celebrate the company's new era under Ethan's leadership. It wasn't just a party, it was a power play, a public reminder to the city's biggest players that Dawson Industries was still untouchable. Only, it wasn't. Because what my father didn't know was that in the 48 hours since Harper Tech had quietly jumped ship, 2 more major accounts had followed. And without those contracts, the victory they were about to toast to was nothing but smoke and mirrors. Alexander and I hadn't been invited, of course, but that didn't matter. Our entrance wasn't going to be subtle. We arrived at the Ritz ballroom just as the first champagne flutes were being passed out. My heels clicked against the marble, and every head turned as we walked through the open doors. The room smelled of roses and money, polished wood floors, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet in the corner. My father was at the center of it all, shaking hands, his smile sharp and practiced. Claire stood beside him in a glittering gold dress. Ethan at her side, wearing a tuxedo like it was a costume he'd borrowed. My sudden appearance was like a drop of ink in water. Conversations slowed, eyes followed. Madison, my father said finally, his voice stiff. This is a private event. I know, I replied, stepping closer. That's why I came. I didn't want you to hear this from anyone else. He raised an eyebrow, glancing at Alexander. And who is? Alexander Cole, Alexander said smoothly, extending a hand he knew my father wouldn't take. Your daughter's new business partner. The tension in the air thickened instantly. Ethan's smirk faltered. Claire glanced at our clasped documents like she was trying to read them from 10 feet away. What business? My father demanded. The business, I said, my voice steady and loud enough for the nearest tables to hear, of taking everything you thought was secure and building it into something you can't touch. I could see it then, the moment realization hit him. The missing accounts, the sudden cancellations, the whispers among the board members in the corner. You? He said, his voice almost incredulous. Me, I answered. And him. I gestured to Alexander. We've acquired Harper Tech, Sorin Logistics, and Premier Global. 3 of your top 5 clients. They're ours now. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The music stopped. Ethan stepped forward, his face flushed. This is sabotage. No, Alexander cut in smoothly. This is competition. And if you think you can compete with us, by all means, try. My father's jaw tightened, but I didn't give him a chance to speak. You told me Ethan was family. You told me I was too emotional to lead. And you replaced me without a war. Second thought. So I stopped thinking about what I owed you and started thinking about what I owed myself. Claire's eyes narrowed. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I met her gaze without blinking. I'm enjoying the fact that I don't need your approval, your validation, or your company. I have my own now, and it's stronger than yours will ever be again. Alexander put a hand lightly on my back, guiding me toward the exit, but I paused at the doorway, turning just enough so my voice carried across the room. Oh, and Dad, I said, next time you decide who's family and who's not, remember this night. Remember how quickly the ground can shift under your feet. The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was the faint pop of a champagne cork, somewhere in the distance, mocking in its celebration. When the doors closed behind us, Alexander glanced at me, the faintest trace of a grin tugging at his mouth. Well, he said, I think that went rather well. I exhaled slowly, feeling the adrenaline ebb. That was just the beginning. Because this wasn't just about taking my father's company down. It was about building something of my own, something untouchable. And as we stepped out into the crisp night air, I knew one thing for certain. He would never underestimate me again.